Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm King Sway, and welcome to the newest edition of King Sway Entertainment. Today we have Kratos versus Thor, Who Would Win by Seth the Programmer. Now, I've done some stuff by him before, and before I get into that, I want to say this is not a debate channel. This is a reaction channel, and I say that in response to some of the comments I've gotten when we covered Goku versus Superman: The Honest Truth. Now, some of the comments that I had gotten were that some of the things I said were baseless. No, what I stated was not baseless. Uh, Someone asked, how did I know that Superman could actually move planets with his bare hands? I did not answer that. I made a point about how I said Goku would never be as physically powerful as Superman. Someone, I don't remember the commenter, but they said, well, his energy can blow up planets, and Goku, by the way, I'm speaking about Goku, and the energy is inside him, so as long as it's inside of him, he can do the same thing physically. No, that is not true. Let me give this analogy. Goku is like an atomic bomb. We all know what those do. Imagine that atomic bomb dropping out of the sky and then going off. Massive devastation. That's Goku's energy when he uses ki blasts. Imagine that same atomic bomb being dropped from the same height, but it doesn't go off. Still great amount of destruction, but because the energy was never released, it was all still inside and not used, the yield is different. That's Goku. Someone said something about my comments being baseless. No, my comments are not baseless. As I said before, this is not a debate channel. This is a reaction channel. I'm reacting to things. It speaks to what I've been saying. Those who watch anime and read manga don't read comics, because the things I was saying that were comic related, comic people know. Like when I said the point of how when Goku and Beerus were fighting and it was warping reality and causing tears and things, Superman did that clapping Wonder Woman's cheeks. All you had to do was look that up. What I said was not baseless. Superman has literally punched through reality. You can look that up too. He punched through reality to punch death in its face. Look that up. Now, without further ado, because I just wanted to address those, because I didn't feel like typing everything out. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but as I said, this is a reaction channel, not a debate channel. I might make a debate channel based on that stuff, but yeah, no. I like this kind of the things that we're getting into. I like those things. They're interesting to me. But yeah, without further ado, Kratos versus Thor. Who would win?
God of War Ragnarok is coming out sometime in 2022, and in the trailer for the game, we see Kratos is finally confronted by Baldur's older brother, Thor, the God of Thunder. There was a lot of foreshadowing for him in God of War 4, obviously, and we do know more than you'd actually think about him just from that game alone. However, this video I wanted to focus on a different Thor for the fun of it, the version from Marvel Comics. Unlike the Kratos versus Thanos video I've already done, I wanted to explore the actual comic variant of the character and not the MCU version, as we've already established in that video. The MCU is pretty With that, we will be having a brief description of the two since I've...
The fuck did he just say? Look, I'm not... The feats are lesser in the MCU. Taking into consideration that the comics have decades of time and have gone through. The MCU did not have decades to do everything that they wanted to do. Actors get older. You got to do that stuff while they can play the role. Robert Downey Jr. No, it's not stuff crap. I loved, not even loved the MCU when they come out. It's very few MCU things that have come out that I've not seen. Captain Marvel. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say that right there. But seriously, dude, what?
I've already broken down Kratos pretty well twice on my channel, which I recommend, by the way. Then we will mainly be describing how their fight would actually pan out. Also, for everyone asking, yes, I will be doing Kratos versus Thanos Part 2, featuring comic Thanos, but that'll be after this video, which interested me a bit more and will focus more on the combat abilities of the characters rather than their weird oddities and special abilities, although we will still have some of that in this video. Since we've talked about Kratos so much already, we might as well go over a few things Thor has done first to keep things a bit more exciting. To begin with, Thor in Marvel has many contrasts and similarities to the actual Thor from Norse mythology, similarly to the Thor from God of War. One of these similarities that the Marvel Thor shares with his video game counterpart is that they both battle the Midgard serpent, Jormungandr. A defining difference between the video game and comic version here, though, is that instead of slamming into the Yggdrasil and causing distortions in time, Jormungandr is just implied to be infinitely long and Thor just beats the out of him. Basically, Thor might have beat up a snake as long as a universe or even longer. One of the funniest feats for Thor is one similar to a feat that Superman had within his comics. Thor is shown to be capable of lifting a book that actually contained infinite pages. Now, obviously, there are many differences between these two feats, such as cosmology, scaling, people arguing if Superman actually did it, and so on. However, this is a very bare minimum gauge of what Thor is capable of doing, as he pretty objectively just performed this action and did it easily as just a child. Another interesting feat that Thor has is when he blatantly endures the force of an attack that scales to the Big Bang itself, which wipes out the Black Galaxy, which is a galaxy-shaped celestial body that actually is as large as a universe when you step into it, further solidifying these universal levels of power for Thor in the comics.
Old stuff.
There is a box called the Casket of Winters that, when opened, freezes over all the realms of Asgard, which are considered to be fully formed universes. This includes places like Hell and so on, yet Thor gets blasted by the energy to freeze over numerous universes straight to his face, and all it does is blow him back a bit. As for Kratos, I've mentioned and gone over in great detail in prior videos what he's capable of, but as I said, I'll briefly discuss his most impressive feats right now. He scales to Thor and Jormungandr, who were capable of splintering the Yggdrasil of the God of War universe, which contains infinite cell strands that transcend time and space and stretch throughout all of the realms, which too are universes like the Marvel version. Not only this, but the realms are stated to actually lay atop the Yggdrasil's branches, yet a baby serpent, not even the older one we see in the game, and probably weaker, younger Thor, splintered it. As an example, this is what a splintered tree looks like on Google Images. We then have further information through the novelization for the fourth game that a branch of the Yggdrasil stretches out to infinity, which would then equate to an infinite amount of cell strands. Kratos scales to this as Mimir is asked by Atreus who would win between Thor and Kratos, in which Mimir states that he's not sure who would win. This is interesting because he has known Thor for 115 years and knows what he's capable of, including fighting the Midgard serpent, while he himself mentioned that they split the Yggdrasil, yet Kratos can potentially win? Mimir also has seen Kratos fight throughout his whole adventure in God of War 4, including seeing him fight Baldur, Magni, and Modi. Mimir also states that Thor could never dream of being as ruthless of a killer as Kratos. But hey, maybe Thor will just two-tap Kratos and...
I want to say, that's the difference in upbringing. We all know Kratos was a Spartan. Spartans are trained to kill since you can hold a sword. Period. My fan is going off something serious. My fan is something serious. It's never doing that. Okay, Thor is a god. Gods do what gods do, and that's pretty much whatever they want. as opposed to Kratos, who was raised like a human, despite the fact that he wasn't, and raised in Sparta, constantly fighting. Yeah, you got Valhalla and stuff like that, but I feel as though that's different. That I feel as though that's really different.
Steal Atreus away or something in the next game, who knows? With that, we can clearly see that these two are capable of handling universe-threatening and altering confrontations, and a debate is clearly able to happen between them reasonably. With that, we can now get into who would actually win and why. I think to start off with who would win, we should first elaborate on which versions of the characters we are using specifically and why. For Thor, we are using his base comic version, and for Kratos, we'll be using his God of War 3 version at the end of the game. The reason for this is that God of War 3 and 4 strength-wise is often debated about, and even among the official staff that work on God of War indirectly. Examples being Cory Barlog, creative director of God of War 2 and 4, thinks that God of War 4 is much stronger than he was in his youth during 3, whereas Bruno Velasquez, lead animation director of every God of War game, period, believes that Zeus would utterly defeat Thor without any difficulty, and thinks a better topic of discussion is Zeus versus Odin. Now, being as Kratos from God of War 3 is obviously stronger than Zeus, whereas we previously established that God of War 4 Kratos is probably slightly weaker, we can then determine that God of War 3 Kratos would be stronger, according to Bruno.
Why would he be weaker?
Regardless of who you think is stronger and why, it can at least be said that God of War 3 Kratos is far more useful in these types of cross-verse battles against other fictional verses due to his far wider variety of special abilities and equipment than his older variant, which has a more simple setup going for him, which will actually be relevant in this fight, in my opinion. So now we imagine how the fated duel would occur in practice. For starters, Thor is a very brute force kind of guy, similar to how Kratos is within God of War 3.
Yeah.
We could probably say that the beginning of the fight would pan out in a similar way to maybe your generic Dragon Ball fight, where they constantly barrage each other with hits over and over. Thor has consistently shown throughout his comics that whenever he is pressed hard enough, he will resort to his special abilities and equipment. Not much is known about Thor's fighting experience, however, other than just flailing his fist around in a brutish force in terms of hand-to-hand combat. So even though he has fought people who are probably extremely intelligent and even skilled at martial arts combat, he himself usually wins these fights without the same finesse that they do. So he doesn't go in throwing down some jujutsu or crazy martial arts most of the time, and even though he has shown some good feats of combat before, he usually doesn't do these types of maneuvers.
I'm stopping it there. Jiu-Jitsu and crazy martial arts. Have you seen the button for my subscribe? I was an MMA fighter, retired recently a couple months ago. I don't know, something about that just don't sit right with me personally. That's just like, jiu-jitsu and crazy martial arts. What's a crazy martial art? Boxing is a martial art, so is wrestling.
However, we know that Kratos was a renowned general of the Spartan army and was raised in Spartan tradition. This would include advanced training in the form of wrestling alongside hand-to-hand combat and weapon mastery.
What did I just get out my mouth? Just get out.
For example, we see this most consistently throughout the fourth game, where Kratos practically wrestles and grapples Baldur throughout all of their encounters.
Shoulder check.
Another example would be with Zeus in the final game of the trilogy as well. Now that we've established combat experience, we can give a better look into their abilities. One of the most important abilities during this fight would have to be stamina, in which Thor would have the upper hand. He's basically fought people for centuries, whereas Kratos' main stamina feat is surviving the climb up Pandora's temple for 3 days straight without any form of fatigue. It's very possible that he could maintain his stamina for a longer period of time,
We aren't
but
debating on
sadly,
Discord.
we don't have much evidence for this personally. However, one argument you could do to amplify Kratos' stamina in terms of a rational argument would be somewhat of a genetic one. He hails from Zeus, respectively, and all the gods, and with these gods being able to fight for eons and possibly immeasurable amounts of time due to battling and scaling above beings who have fought before time even existed to measure how long they went at it. If you think Kratos should remotely scale to the gods in terms of these stamina feats, then Kratos could probably do this as well. Due to Thor having a very clear gap in stamina empirically over Kratos, we then have to dive into whether or not a fight between them
Hulk
would even
versus
last
Thor.
that long to begin
I have
with.
that movie.
But
Watch
as we
it. Loved it.
described, even if Kratos doesn't have the stamina to fight that long, he does in fact defeat people that can. In the majority of the fights that Kratos finds himself in, it eventually falls down to his special abilities or his relentless aggression towards his enemies that results in him being the victor. Being as I've talked about Kratos for a decent bit, I'll give him a break to go over Thor's basic equipment and special abilities he'll have access to throughout the fight. Thor's main piece of equipment should be obvious, and that is his Mjolnir. Mjolnir is a magical hammer made of a special metal known as Uru that was obtained by Odin when he wrestled with a catastrophic storm known as the God Tempest, which allows Thor to harness and control his lightning at will, alongside granting him other abilities as
Be
well.
he so worthy,
As for
shall with the
Kratos, I'd
power
be
of
sitting here for
Thor.
hours trying to explain all of his equipment and the abilities that they provide for him, so I'll only be mentioning the most important pieces, whilst
The blades
giving
of
a
Sparta.
brief summary of what they can do. The first piece of equipment, and probably the most powerful in his arsenal, would be the Blade of Olympus. The Blade of Olympus is basically the strongest weapon of God of War, at least the original trilogy, and empowers Kratos with his godly energy that he lost at the beginning of God of War 2, alongside providing him with some pretty sick stuff, such as being capable of draining his enemies of their godly energy, which Thor has a considerable amount of, alongside creating an AoE attack that banishes his foes to Tartarus. This is not all their equipment, but it is important to start off with the knowledge that they have those things. If they actually fought, the initial reaction is more than likely a CQB brawl, in which Kratos would have the upper hand. If he does have the upper hand and has the Blade of Olympus, then he would gradually become stronger and stronger, while Thor grows weaker to the point that Thor's immense stamina would no longer matter. Due to Thor
Agreed.
losing in a conventional sense, Thor would result to his ultimate ability, which is called the God Blast. In Thor's own words, the God Blast is Thor fusing his life force with his hammer to create an unsurpassed attack that can destroy opponents even way stronger than himself. In terms of power, the God Blast is capable of surpassing even Odin and a hungry Galactus. Odin scales to Surtur, whose flames were going to consume the Yggdrasil, which encompasses the entire multiverse and holds every dimension, etc. Odin also fought a character named Seth, not to be confused with me, and during their battle, they were ripping apart the fabric of the multiverse in Doctor Strange's words. Due to this, the God Blast would utterly annihilate Kratos upon impact, probably even when heavily nerfed. However, Kratos has a hidden ability that allows him to survive the onslaught of Fear Zeus, who is the conceptual embodiment of fear, and this is referred to as Hope. Hope basically provides him access to returning from death as long as he is in the mindset of forgiving himself and absolving from his past mistakes, which he will be, being as that's what happened to him at the end of God of War 3. The God Blast, due to its scaling of being able to eradicate Galactus, should in turn be able to erase concepts themselves, probably concepts above concepts, as weird as that sounds. However, the only problem is that you'd have to argue that Thor would have to have prior knowledge on Kratos at the start of the fight to even know to target the concept of hope, which Kratos would regenerate with, which is a bit of a stretch. Due to this, it may be very likely Kratos would revive, and would probably eventually defeat base Thor by wearing him down and stealing his power. One thing you can bring up is that the God Blast also has a draining ability, as described by Galactus when he got hit by it, comparing it as it drains his strength like the sunlight drains the dark. This would mean even if Kratos survived, that perhaps he would not be nerfed, but at the end of God of War 3, when Kratos stabbed himself with the Blade of Olympus, it had no effect on his abilities or his hope abilities, and even possibly granted him even more powers. One thing that potentially gives Kratos another leg up in this argument is that his bare hands can pretty much beat up concepts let alone his own body, which probably is just blatantly above them. These concepts being fear, which was embodied in Zeus at the end of 3. There is another argument that Thor does have the ability to remove Kratos from the equation by sending him to a realm in which Kratos would not be able to escape from. However, this ability is something that Thor rarely uses in character. However, if he did do it, Kratos would be hard pressed to counter this. For those that are concerned about speed scaling, both Thor and Kratos have speed feats that allow them to move so fast they travel through time. For example, I'll show a few for Thor on screen, but one of these is his ability to throw his hammer so fast it just travels back in time. And for Kratos, he is capable of moving along the Yggdrasil and inside its borders, which completely transcends time utterly. If you don't think that this Yggdrasil travel feat compares to what Thor did or is somehow inconsistent, then Thor would take the win with speed alone. In a conventional fight, however, Kratos would.
Thor's speed feat is Thor himself, whereas Kratos' speed feat was him using something. Take that out of the equation, you take that factor out of the equation. Thor
would defeat base Thor. This, like I said, is for base Thor. If we were to say put Cosmic King Thor against Kratos, it would be drastically different. Cosmic King no longer gets most of his power from his god abilities, but from Galactus. So the Blade of Olympus would likely have very little effect on him, even if it did strike him. In terms of power, we know that Black Silver Surfer could fight the Griever for 16 minutes straight, and the Griever represents the concept of the end of the multiverse to the end of eternity, which eternity encompasses the superflow, which is the space between universes, which is beyond the concepts of time and space entirely. Black Silver Surfer, for reference, was not confident in fighting a being named Null or the Black Winter, both of which Cosmic King Thor could contest, and even if Thor was slightly weaker than those beings, he would at least scale to that tier of strength.
Yes.
In all honesty, this far exceeds the likes of anything God of War has mustered so far. Meaning Kratos would more than likely defeat base Thor from the comics and lose to the Cosmic King. Thank you all for watching. A special thanks to my guy Kratos, very unique name, for helping me out with some Kratos hacks, knowledge, and so on. And a shout out to Dripnose, who actually works at Frito-Lay, apparently. He wanted me to let you know that. Anyways, thank you so much, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Until next time. Also, look forward to Kratos vs. Thanos Part 2, and make sure you subscribe if you want to see that.
Alright, I don't believe that Kratos would win in base form. I know he wouldn't win if it took a cosmic, because Rune King Thor is when he has power of the Odin Force. Cosmic Thor is when he has the power cosmic granted to him by Galactus. He was a herald of Galactus for a little bit. I don't believe he'd win. Like, one thing Thor used to do when he was battling the Hulk was just hit the Hulk so hard that Hulk would go flying. And then by the time Hulk got back, Thor was gone. That was because he just didn't want to fight the Hulk. You know, he'd yeet him that way and then be like, yeah, you know, I'll just be gone when you get back here. There's no reason why he couldn't do that to Kratos. Also, they might be compatible in strength. I mean, physical strength, But I still want to give Thor the edge on that one. Slight edge, but I still want to give Thor the edge. On top of that, Thor can fly. Flight and there's the speed difference, like they were saying. And as he said, had to go through Yggdrasil, as opposed to Thor just actually having the power himself. Those are two different things. I'm gonna say Thor. But that's my reaction to it. And here's one I'm going to hit you with standard YouTuber jargon. If you like this video, hit the like and subscribe button, the notification button, and the bell. I try to do uploads at least 3 times a week. Sunday to Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And Wednesdays sometimes if I have the time. I'm still a father. You guys have seen some of my kids, and I work 2 jobs, so I give you guys what I can. But hitting that stuff lets me know that one, you're picking up what I'm putting down. It also lets YouTube know that you're liking my content, and it pushes that content out to other people. I've gotten a lot of responses from that, people saying that they subscribed just because of, I came across their page or something, and boom, there you go. I got an Etsy shop. I'm actually in the process of adding more merchandise to it. Some of it is Dragon Ball. A lot of it actually, because I like comics, is comic related. I commission artists to do certain things, and then I put their artwork on the shirts. I'll have a link to my shop. I got a shop open now, but I want to have everything going when I get the chance to upload the new stuff, to upload the new merchandise. So be looking for that pretty soon. We got some sweet stuff, especially Spider-Man related. Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man. Excuse me. Got Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and he's got a Venom symbiote coming over, and Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. We have that going on, and we actually have Andrew Garfield with his own Ghost Spider, with Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, because she was Gwen. She was my MJ. But as I said, that's then for me. I'm King Sway. I'm gonna catch you in the next one.